So welcome everybody, my name is Paul Spires, and this is the first of my series of amazing books that if you learn from these books, it'll change your life and blow your mind. And I want to talk about the three really particular amazing books, and I'll talk about them briefly and make the videos fairly short. But one of the first ones is the Upanishads. This is one of my favorite books. It's just so small. It basically has no particular author. It's very, very ancient, and it comes from the Hindu culture, which is the area of the world, the Indus Valley, and there's an area, so it became Hindu. But anyway, their old tradition is this book here that kind of outlines the purpose of human life. And there's a number, it's very, very short. It's amazing how profound it is for being so short. And what it really talks about is who are we? And there's an interesting drama because there's a young child in one of the dramas. There's a conversation between this child, and for some reason he wanted to understand what death was all about and all that. And he finds his teacher and he starts asking these questions. And the dialogue that goes back and forth in the original translation. Now you can get a good translation. It's written originally in Sanskrit, but if you get a good translation, very poetic, and it's so elegant and simple, so amazing. It talks about, well, what about this life? What are we doing here? Or, what about this? What about that? And this teacher goes on and answers him and makes him practice certain things and ask certain questions about. And it's just the opening statement here. I'll just try to read it here briefly. It's a quote from one particular part. As smoke and sparks arise from a lighted fire, kindled with damp fuel, even so, my son, have been breathed forth from the eternal all knowledge and all wisdom, what we know as the Rig Veda, the Yajurveda, and the rest. They are the breath of the eternal. And there's a lot of subtle nuances in the various quotes from the Upanishads that have to do with the sound of the pronunciation and the practice that they do and the repetition and everything, because it was a sacred language. The Sanskrit had a very profound sound aspect to it, not just the words themselves, the written words. And it really talks about how this human journey, trying to understand who we are, and actually it comes out to be very, very simple. That's why the book is so short, because it means just taking our attention from outside to inside, and there's a short step to understanding a part of us that is linked with the eternal, and you can rationalize it and try to intellectualize it or whatever and argue against it, but if an experience happens where you link yourself to that breath of the eternal, then it changes your whole life, your whole perception. All of a sudden it's like, instead of feeling like a rider on a horse, or you're the horse and you're being kicked all the time by something, your subconscious mind or whatever, instead you're the rider on the horse and you have the control of this life. Like, this is a vehicle that we have here as we live here. And one of the statements in this beautiful book was, from joy all beings are born, by joy they live, and unto joy they return. With joy there is creation, without joy there is no creation. So know the nature of joy. And if you stop and think about that, it's a very profound statement, because we all have to pass here. We come into this world, we just find ourselves being born, and then we find out that the whole journey is carried through by some gracious, beautiful, fantastic mystery that we're a participant in, and it has a poetic nature to it. And when we go from the outside to the inside and understand some of the teachings of this very simple book, it really can make a dramatic shift in a person's life. And it did for me long ago, and it has for many people. And I know there's many other scriptures and so on, but I'm just recommending a few that I know, and I'll get to many of the others. There's so many good ones, but this is so simple. It doesn't ask to have any belief or anything. It doesn't claim any authority. It just makes some statements and makes you reflect on your own nature. And it's the whole idea of a neutrality, of a non-duality. Where is the peace in our life? The peace ultimately comes from a place where there's no conflict anymore. There's no duality, and there is a state of consciousness within us that's like a child has that. They come out of the womb, and all of a sudden we're out of one dimension into another, and it's a very profound thing. We wake up, and I watched two of my children be born, and they take their first breath, and it's like, whew. So the Asian culture has taught us to learn, hey, you're born, you have a wonderful journey, then you pass, but when you go, you don't have to go like a bird in a tree. It can go on the ground, it can go in the middle of the tree, and even if the tree gets cut down, it can just fly away. And there's a beautiful statement in this book that says, like, someone asks about what happens at death and everything, and it says, like, a beautiful poetic way. It says, like a caterpillar climbs slowly, inch by inch, up a blade of grass. So at the top, it reaches out, finds another branch, another leaf to attach to, and he says, so the human soul after death leaves this one body, this one vehicle, seeking out another life. Once again, the breath of the eternal is our true nature has an eternal nature about it, and every single aspect of our life. Make it short, I'll just put the second book here. Who lived in southern India, I believe late of the 18th century, early 19th century, or rather, late 19th, early 20th, something like that. But anyway, he was a very, very simple man, and he lived in southern India, and he had an innate quest for who am I. His whole thing was just question who you are. Ask, who is this? Am I this body? Am I not this body? What am I? Because we go through this life, we just go do a lot of things, but when you ask her a question like, what are we actually? Am I the same being as I was when I was a baby? Once upon a time, I had a tiny little body, didn't even exist, and then I come along, and during this lifetime, well, what am I? One day I'm just going to get out of this vehicle. So he had very, very profound experience, and he said he came to the conclusion of just non-duality. There's a state of non-duality in our own existence, where there's absolute peace, there's absolute harmony, because there's absolutely no conflict whatsoever, because ultimately, he kept saying, and like many sages say, it's absolutely totally simple. The fact is that the reality of our existence is so utterly simple, it's almost hard to comprehend how simple it is. It has to do with dropping a certain identity fixation for a moment and realizing that, like you have wings, you can fly. Literally, there's an inner being that has a more permanent nature to it, and it doesn't have any conflict because it is submerged with the existence itself. There's one consciousness. It's so profound. It's like, for example, if you look in a mirror and you see that mirror and you're looking at yourself in a mirror, and there's this physical thing that it's an appearance. Like it seems like there's two people, and then you start looking at it and you realize, well, there's a oneness between what you're seeing and what you are, what you're seeing in reflection. And this world that we live in, if you think about it realistically, it's like a three-dimensional hologram in a way. I mean, on a quantum physical level, there's a certain holographic unreality to the physical existence, but because we're, on some dimension, there's all these chemicals going on, atoms moving along, and we're completely unaware of all that because we're fixed on who we think we are. So by looking and reflecting in ourselves and asking, well, who am I? What am I? And then you realize you get to that point, a simpler state in your own being where you realize, it's not that complicated. It's sort of like you drop the veil. It's like he had this one example where, let's say, someone sees a burnt rope and they think it's a snake, and they get all afraid because they think, and then you just touch it and the snake falls. It's just a burnt rope. And there's a certain nature of our ego that seems like so threatening, or but it's just a simple obstacle that you just touch it, and there's a certain point of view that we can get to in our own inner consciousness where that fragmented, fractured manufactured identity that we call our personality and so on, breaks open like a caterpillar, and then we find out there's a whole lot more to our existence. So I wanted to start with these few really incredible books because they really get into the essence of who we are as a human being and what we're doing here, because it's a very, very profound thing to be alive, and oxygen has to exist and hydrogen has to exist so we can take a breath. And you think about that for a while and kind of like realize, well, that's pretty lucky that we're here. So my second book was really look up Ramana Maharishi. This is actually a kind of a translation and a dialogue with him, and there's a lot of question and answer, because that's what he did. He did a lot of question and answer with people, and he taught in silence. He said some of the greatest teaching happens in silence, because you can't really speak truth, you see. So people would just sit there and watch him, and he would just look at them, and a whole atmosphere of bliss would happen, and then people would go away like, wow, that was incredible. So that was his story. So I recommend you look at him. Ramana Maharishi, The Quest for Who Am I. Now I'll do this, see here, we got, I'll do a few more minutes here, and I'll steer you in. I've done other videos about this book, The Light of the Soul. This gets a little more technical about the nature of our consciousness, and it's very technical. It's originally 108 aphorisms, and this has a lot of commentary. This is one of the commentaries of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali from through Alice Bailey, who was a student of a great esoteric teacher from India, a Tibetan teacher. Anyway, the Yoga Sutra Patanjali has other translations, but it was 108 aphorisms, and it goes into great detail. It's amazing. Someone asked him, well, how come it's so short? It's only 108 sutras, which is basically stitches or conversations or statements. And he said, well, if I'd lived longer, it would have been even shorter, because he's trying to put it in the essence, the ultimate essence of who we are as consciousness, of what we can do. The states of mind that we can have as human beings, the various aspects of our human technology that we have, the nerves, there's a whole system that we have as a technology. It's like, imagine yourself given a key, and someone says, okay, go on that parking lot and find a vehicle for this key. And you think it's like a shopping cart or something like that. And actually it's a sophisticated, can fly, can go underwater, can go everywhere. And you have this key as a human body, that there's one great sage that said, the angels, heavenly celestial beings yearn and pine to have this body. They call it the body of the gods. Well, here we are. Look in the mirror. It doesn't matter what shape it is, or you got one of those bodies. That's the Maserati spaceship body that can do the technology of linking our own awareness to the infinite awareness within. And it's an infinite journey. It's not like you get to some plateau and go, okay, well, I'm there now. It's kind of like, okay, explore the ocean of your awareness, and it goes through your whole life, and who knows how long before that or after that. But at least in this life, there's a technology about our existence. It's not just a mystical thing. This is the science. There's an actual science of consciousness with repeatable experiences and unending results. And I'll get into some of these other books, but one of the next ones I have is about the sacred science and the mysticism of using energy. And, I'm going to get into esoteric science, because I've had a lot of other videos about it. And some people ask me, okay, well, how do you know it's real? The way that people knew it was real is that it worked, you see. So you can do a lot of things and not know exactly all the physics behind it, but you know how to do things, and it always works. So the same way that there was a technology of manipulating energy through our own body system and also around us, the pranic energy and so on, by concentrated effort and other kinds of things, and sound and so on, that came into a deep practice, and it was long forgotten that we had civilizations that got totally destroyed in the past. But these remnants teaching us how to operate our own Maserati, you might say, here's how to do it. So I'll make another video about this book, but I have made quite a few videos regarding this particular book, and you can go see some of the other ones. But I will now end this video to make them kind of short and interesting, and I hope you join me in some of my other explorations of books. So thanks again for listening. Like and share if you'd like, and I hope to see you in some of my other videos soon.